Good morning, everybody. On June 2, 1851, the state of Maine banned all alcoholic beverages. Now, this was not the beginning nor the end of the temperance movement, but it was the first time a state had done something like this. Here's a picture of a colonial pub or saloon or bar, people drinking. There were laws against drunkenness and disorderly conduct way back then, so we've been dealing with this issue for a long time. Women were one of the first to really work against alcohol and alcoholism because they saw drunkenness as a threat to the family, and they had to guard the family. So when the first temperance society was formed in Boston in 1826, many of its members were women, and they saw themselves as simply acting out their role as protector of the family. Now here's a picture of a Methodist camp meeting during the Great Awakening of the 1830s and 40s. And one of the results of the Great Awakening was a renewed emphasis on personal piety, on personal behavior, and drunkenness was not part of that. So on this date, June 2, in 1851, Maine became the first state to enact a law prohibiting alcohol, and many states followed that. Now that emphasis on temperance or prohibition came to a pause during the Civil War, partly because soldiers used alcohol a lot and often as a way to dull pain while they were being operated on, because there weren't painkillers like we have today. But soon after the war, Prohibition picked up again. There was a Prohibition Party in 1869 that made that its political goal. And in the early 1870s, the Women's Christian Temperance Union was formed. And its goal was temperance or even prohibition. And one of its famous people was Carrie Nation, pictured here. She would go into saloons, especially in Kansas, with a hatchet and smash the bar and wine bottles and whiskey bottles. She was arrested over 30 times and always claimed that God was telling her to do what she did. So here's a picture of urban America in the late 1800s. There are more and more immigrants coming to our country from Europe. They have a much more relaxed attitude toward alcohol than many in rural America, so you get an urban-rural split on the issue. Here's a big city saloon. And not only were they seen as places where men got drunk, but also where corrupt politicians would hang out searching for votes. So they didn't have a very good connotation. And many of the brewers in the big cities operated their own saloons where they would serve free food, but it was really salty. So that would force people, so to speak, to buy more and more alcohol. So by the time we get to the 1890s, there's a real feeling against saloons, and the Anti-Saloon League is formed. Again, the emphasis on protecting the family. Notice the reference to boys and girls here. Now, economists weighed in too, and they said because so many people are hung over on Monday, work doesn't get done. So if we get rid of alcohol, Monday will become more productive, and that'll be good for the economy. And when the 16th Amendment was passed in 1913, and set up the income tax, there was less need for taxes on alcohol. So World War I started in 1914. We get involved around 1917, and rationing included grain. So this was one reason why people stopped drinking beer, because grain wasn't used for that. And there was a real sense of nativism too during World War I, an anti-German feeling. So cities that had German populations like Milwaukee and St. Louis and had breweries, they were really frowned upon. So in 1919, the 18th Amendment was passed. Prohibition became added to the Constitution, so we were about to begin a big social experiment. Can you really get away with this? And the legislation that was set up to administer prohibition, so to speak, was called the Volstead Act, named after the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. But it didn't work very well, and many people see this as one reason why organized crime became so big. So the Roaring Twenties has a lot going on with fashion, with music, with autos, but underneath it all, is prohibition.